the folk revival. This is, by the way, 90.5 WICN Worcester, jazz plus folk for New England.
Support for WICN comes from the 2015 Newport Jazz Festival, July 31st through August 2nd at Fort Adams Park in Newport, Rhode Island. Sunday, August 2nd features Jamie Cullum, Dr. John and the Night Trippers, Arturo Sandoval, Billy Child's Jazz Ensemble, and many more. Gates open at 10 a.m. More information and tickets at newportjazzfest.org.
And we are back on the folk revival in just a few minutes. We'll be joined by the wonderful Laura Sersema talking about her latest musical project. But I do want to take a moment to say hi to folks who are listening. Ronald has already chimed in from Australia. Ronald, I'm glad you're enjoying the show in the future. Hamilton and Beijing. Marshall in Worcester. Bill Bagley. Also Worcester, Nancy in Framingham, Doug and Gwen, Jen Caswell, Owen and the Marchands, the Berger Lisby family. Let's see who else. Haley, I think you might be listening. You're going to be on in a couple of hours. Mitch, Mari, Peg, Sandy Haddon. A couple of your songs, at least one of your songs later on tonight, Sandy. Alex, Kristen, Mark, Sandy, Steve, Bruce, Francis. Francis probably not on yet. Nick Courier out there in Connecticut. Hannah, Amy, Larry and Bridget, Mary, Dave, Jen, Rich, Amazing Dick is listening. Sean, Linda, Robert, Mark, Eileen, Christian, Linda, Colette. Got a song of yours coming up, too, in a bit, Colette. Bill and Eli, Lori and Fred. Lori, you're coming up, too. Lisa Martin, yes, you too as well. Lynn Schultz, Molly Pinto-Madigan, both of you are going to have songs on the show fairly soon tonight. Karen, let's see who else. Henry, Robin, I have one of your songs at least, Robin. Chris, Mark, a lot of great people tuning in and checking out the folk revival. And as I said, I'll be joined momentarily by Laura Sersema, but here's a track from her, a demo track from her latest project.
All things bright and beautiful
Wow. Wow. That was first hymn from Aberfan. Is that right, Laura? Aberfan. Oh, we got to speak a little louder than that, I think. Aberfan? Who? We got to make this work here. We'll come back to that. Yeah, Aberfan, which is an interesting project. And it's Laura Searsome is here with me, and once again, we're trying to get the everything to work properly here and make things work. Try it now, Laura. Go ahead.
Aberfan?
Aberfan. And Aberfan is in Wales?
That's right.
You actually began with an old Welsh hymn there, didn't you?
It was sung that morning in school.
Oh, so. That morning. Tell us the story. Laura, wonderful musician. She was one of my earliest guests a million years ago on the Folk Revival and had a wonderful album back then, Talon of the Black Water, which I love to play tracks from every now and then. But recently, Laura, you've taken on a new project, one that's a little different, but I really believe it's integral to the folk process in so many ways. It's the story of Aberfan. Go ahead, tell us about it.
In October 1966, a tragic landslide occurred in this small Welsh coal village at about 9:15 in the morning.
The village was Aberfan.
The village was Aberfan in southern Wales. It was a village built around the coal industry, and though there had been evidence that there had been that morning, though it was sunny that morning, there had been evidence when the miners went to work that morning that there had been a drop in one of the mountain heaps of spoil of coal waste that lay just above the village. It was called Tip Number 7. And at about 9:15 in the morning, the children had just come from their assembly where they had sung that hymn. And within, I actually don't know how long, but very, very quickly, the mountain crashed down, an avalanche, behaving very much like water. It was so, there was so much water and moving so quickly. It buried the schoolhouse. That was one of the buildings that it took over, killing 116 children and 28 adults, most of them young, very young.
So it was, in its own way, a mining disaster, but something that didn't just affect miners, but an entire community.
That's right.
And how did you come to know about this story?
In 1966, my mom heard about this disaster, as the whole world did, watched it, saw pictures of it, and shortly after that, in response, as a writer does, she wrote a folk song called "In a Town Called Aberfan." I used to hear that as a child.
I've actually played it on this show.
Oh, you did?
Yes, you sent me a version of it, and I played it.
When I made my second album, I had wanted to create my own arrangement of her song, so I did, using piano, which I do. It was written on guitar, but for some reason, and for reasons deeper than I can know, it's been a mission of mine to create an adaptation of my own. And it began back in 2003 with that song you're talking about that I recorded for my second album. And it remained underground for a while until I started working with my trio, and I became compelled to create a longer version of it. And then it dropped down again, and it went into places that are new to me, musically, new to me, psychically, creatively, in every way. I experienced a process that I have never experienced before, and it's taken years to come to this position where I have a completed full-length composition. Could be 45 minutes, it could be an hour, I'm not sure how long it will end up being, and it will be different every time it's played. There's so many elements of this that are different and that require an expansion of the way I used to think about music. And
So you have this project, Aberfan,
yes,
and you're continuing to work on it. What we're playing today are demos, just the vocal and the piano. You're planning to layer it and do more with that, don't you?
yes. These are the piano tracks and vocal tracks, mainly to show that I have completed the composition. My version of it is really called 7 pianos, percussion, voice, and tools of rescue. This is the concept for going into the studio.
Wow.
And for which,
go ahead.
Oh, for which I'm fundraising right now.
Well, we have a lot of musicians who listen to this show, and I think they'd find that fascinating. I'd like to play another track from that. You call it Interlude. Rubble, is that right? Tell me about it.
I might have to hear it first.
All right, let's listen to another track from Laura Sersima's Aberfan.
Loving shepherd of thy sheep, keep thy lambs in safety, keep. None can pluck them from thy hand.
Okay, tell us about that, Laura. That was beautiful. By the way, the voice coming in at the end there, that was build up for it. It's beautiful and kind of made you think, loving shepherd. What's going on in that part?
That was one of the hymns actually sung at the funeral less than a week after this disaster. I was found out through communication on a blog what the song sung at the funeral, and of those I chose this particular one, because I didn't know it, and I just was drawn to use this particular one. And of course I've rearranged it harmonically quite a bit, but it should be recognizable.
You know, I want to come back to that in a second, because I want to share with our listeners what you're doing and what you're trying to do with it. But I first need to let people know this is 90.5 WICN Worcester, jazz plus folk for New England, and support for WICN comes from Scholars Jazz Club. Since 1989, Scholars has presented the biggest names in Latin and contemporary jazz, blues, soul, R&B, cabaret, and world music. Sitting on Charles River, the Boston landmark views the skyline of the city. Enjoy live shows and dinner. Learn more at www.scholarsjazz.com. And we are back with Laura Searsema. Laura, it's wonderful to have you here. Very impressive. What I wanted to share with my listeners, our listeners out there, many of whom are musicians, as to why I see this as sort of the epitome of the folk process. Because folk music, in all its definitions, is about stories. And the Aberfan story obviously moved your mother to write a folk song, moved you to take that song and build on it, and to do something special, to explore music that you hadn't heard before. You talked about picking one of the hymns that was sung at the funeral, one that you didn't know.
Yes.
And what you get is something new and something special. People who expect to hear, you know, guitars and penny whistles sometimes say, well, that isn't folk music, but it is the folk process, and it's really, really important. Now, tell us what you're doing now with this and what you're hoping to do.
Yes, I'm fundraising to go into the studio and make a recording. Next year is the 50th anniversary of this disaster, and there are many special activities planned in Wales and in Aberfan, of course. So I am hoping to be able to install or perform this piece in its entirety as a full piece over there. I was in communication with a photojournalist named I.C. Rappaport, and because of black and white photos he took when he went to Aberfan in the 2 months following the disaster. And in his words, he says he went there to photograph the psychic mess. And
the what again? Say it
the
again.
Psychic mess.
The psychic mess. Wow. Go ahead.
I was very moved by the photographs and wanted very much to create a performance, a presentation. I say performance, not with, think of that differently. Think of it more as a presentation of these images in the background somehow moving as the piece is being played and or performed. So
I think of it as an experience, more than a presentation. Presentation to me, it sounds like a lecture. You know, here's a slideshow about the terrible thing that happened. But you're trying to create a really multimedia experience for people to discover the truth, the story behind this mining disaster, and how music can evoke something out of that. So,
oh, that's so true. I've been working on a grant, and some of the ways that you've just described it are exactly how I speak about it, too.
Great minds think alike.
The vibrations of music reach places unconsciously that we are unable to access any other way. And in this way, it is a retelling of the story. And my experience of creating this composition was one of almost entering it as I could myself. And it, in its totality, is very much like what is called program music, which is to say, telling a story. So the song begins with rain. It's a very rainy region in that portion of Wales. It was not raining on the day of the disaster, however, but it was part of their experience of their living. So there are 7 pianos layered upon each other, creating the sense of rain, the sense and sound of rain.
Well, we're going to come back to you talking about your fundraiser, et cetera, in a minute. I'd like to play one more section of it. You call it the final hymn. Did you pick another hymn and play with it, or what did you do?
I'm not sure what this one is.
That's the nice part about music here on the Folk Revival.
lakes all through the day. They dug with their shovels and hands, kept on digging, kept on digging.
Laura Searsma, that's almost jazz. Yeah, I could see you get, there's the echoes of your mother's song there.
Yes, I must have mislabeled that, Nick, because that is the portion that I retained from, or portions of my mother's song are in that. Yes.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And the Children of Aberfan, was that the name of her song? Is that right?
In a town called Aberfan.
In a town called Aberfan, that's right. So tell us about this project and what you're trying to do. What's your goal here? How can people help you?
I am fundraising right now to go into the studio and record this year, to make a recording with percussion, voice, and 7 pianos and tools of rescue. I will be working with Michael Farquharson, a Juno Award-winning producer, and with Dakma Anzai, a percussionist I met at Berkeley, an incredible percussionist who plays like water. We hope to record this year in preparation for the 50th anniversary next October. There's a lot of information at my website.
Yes. What is your website, Laura Searsma?
It's LauraSearsema.com. I bet Nick would be able to give that to you again if you called and you didn't get it on the first
LauraSearsema.com. LauraSearsema, correct?
Yes.
LauraSearsema.com, LauraSearsema.com. If you want to play even a small role in this tremendous project, and again, to me, a real contemporary piece of the folk process. Laura, thank you so much for being part of tonight's show. We're going to end in a minute or so with one last piece from your Aberfan. But any last words?
Yes, I will say this is a fiscally sponsored program. New York Foundation for the Arts is my fiscal sponsor, which means that they are my nonprofit. They allow me then to offer everything as a tax deduction, every donation.
There you go.
That's very important to say.
Now, Laura is an absolutely wonderful local New England artist. She's out of Greenfield, the Greenfield area. As I mentioned, a number of my listeners are familiar with her earlier work, particularly her album Talent of the Black Water, which I love to play from time to time. Some great stuff on there, some great original stuff, and at least one absolutely superb cover on that. And Laura Searsma, the project called Aberfan, the true story of a mining disaster that didn't just impact miners, but an entire community in Wales. And Laura, again, thank you so much. Don't forget, LauraSearsema.com, LauraSearsema.com. We're going to play you out with a section that you've labeled as rain, and you talk about water and rain. So we'll go ahead with it. Laura, thanks so much for being part of the show.
Thanks so much, Nick.
It's an absolute delight having you here. Laura Searsema, Aberfan. Laura Searsema, Aberfan, Rain. Here on the Folk Revival, we are, of course, celebrating local New England artists, and here are a bunch in a row from some great local New England artists. We'll hear from the